What's up guys, it's Minx. In the last video we started building levels, we created a level designer, and we started placing blocks in the world, which is great. In this video, and then the next thing I wanted to do was load levels from saves, and the best way to do that is to create a list of buttons based on save files, and then use those, it's like, all right, you click this button and it's associated with the save file, load the save from that save file. So how do we do that? Well, we create a list of buttons, and then for I and range list of buttons, create new, or a list of files, not buttons. For I and range list of files, create a new button plus height or width, depending on which way we go. We'll create a new button going down or over the length that we need. The problem is if we have like 20 of them or more, because I doubt I'll probably increase the limit on that later when we get to it, is it doesn't all show up on screen. So I decided to make a scroll box, and that's what today's video is going to be. We're going to spend this entire video creating a god dang scroll box. These are difficult to make. Uh, the logic isn't actually that bad. I've got it all figured out. I kind of just started piecing things together, and it came together fairly nicely. It's not the prettiest thing, and you could definitely make it a lot prettier, and I'll show you how. But I took like the easy the easy way out, and you'll see what I mean by that. So let's go ahead and get started. Everything here, button, IGUI, level, menu, game window, game menus are all going to be changed in one way or another. Plus, we're going to be adding a new file for the scroll box. So this is going to be probably a long video, just a heads up in advance. So let's go ahead and get some of the easier things out of the way. So the first thing I want to do is let's fix the interface because that's only one line. And to fix the interface, just want to say, I'm going to put under on click because it kind of seems to make sense here. I'm going to do a new void on scroll, and it's going to take a bool, and I'm just going to call it up. This is whether it's going up or down because we can pass that through. So that's it for the interface. We can actually close out of the interface now. Let's head over to so everything that we need is, or every GUI is going to have to implement it because they implement IGUI. So go into each of them. I think Border already has it. Oh no, maybe it doesn't. I thought it did. On scroll, it should have. Oh, it's got the old version with the improper name. If I rename this, it should work. On scroll, button I know doesn't have it, so I'm just gonna implement interface. On scroll, hopefully it's at the bottom. Get rid of this. We're just gonna ignore scroll behavior. Border, we ignore scroll, save that. Button, we're going to keep open because we got a lot more to do in here. And then I think those are the only two we do this with, so we can ignore, so it's good. The other thing I want to do for button is if the button is not within the territory that we want it to be, so it's not within our scroll box, I want to hide it. Instead of doing the math to determine like how much of it to draw, because we don't have anything like I'm not even sure. Man, I don't remember the name. We kind of like hide part of the object. We don't have anything to do that way, or to do it that way as far as I know. So what's going to do is visible checks. So for like draw, we only want to draw if we are visible. So if this dot visible, it's going to say draw. Otherwise, we just don't do anything. One thing to note is even though we may not draw the rectangle still exists. So we need to also do an if this dot is visible check here, and you don't need to do the little stuff, the curly braces. We can just tab it since it's one line. Save, and that's good for now. The only other thing I want to do for the button, I guess we can do it since we're here. The problem is it takes a lot of work once we've done it to fix it everywhere else, but we may as well get it out of the way. So in previous videos, I talked about adding like a parameter to the action when the button does it, so that way we can, like, for example, in this particular case, when we create a bunch of buttons, we can identify the different actions that those buttons take by setting an integer or some other variable on those specific buttons and then passing that through to the method. So we don't have to create 20 different methods when we create 20 different buttons. We create one method with a parameter that to the button set. So to do that, we're going to do that now. we take action and we add these little triangular brackets and pass in a variable or a type. I'm going to pass an int as the type, pass in an int, and then I'm going to give the object a variable. So we're going to say int click value, and that is what happens when you click. So, or the value that gets passed through. So you can see click or this.click is failing to equal click. It's because system.action is not equal to system.action with a parameter of int. We'll fix that in a second. Let's come down here and say this dot action, oops, click value. Oh, well, we can't do that yet until we give that a parameter as well. So let's go ahead and fix clicked here. So action, we just got to pass an int to action here, just like we did before. And then towards the end, we can do a int click value. And we'll just set it equal to 0 by default. It's like, hey, just pass in a 0 unless you specify otherwise. And then say this dot click value equals, wow, click value. So then when we say on click this dot click, we say this dot click click value. And now we can see, okay, it's not saying we have any issues just yet, but if we click on this, saying no issue, let me start it. There we go. I don't know why. I think it's because I don't have the files open. We have a lot of errors. Let's go fix those before we proceed. So we can see that it's just with the methods. Now, right now, these methods probably don't need the ints, but unfortunately, I'm not going to take the time to figure out a way to write this where some of them can take it, some of them don't. It's just not something I care enough to do. So we're just going to pass it through. So like start level might be a good one to have it on. Create level might also be a good one to have it on, because we could say create level, create, with a template, and we use this to determine the template or something. I don't know. And save level, let's imagine is the last one, right? Yep. Okay. So start just to make sure there's no other missing issues. Cool. Okay. So these may not use it. They don't need to. It can just be a pass through as nothing, and that's okay. One thing to note here is if we don't specify it, they're all going to pass through a 0 anyway. So we'll need to remember to specify that in the future. But that is it for button. Button doesn't need to do anything else because button doesn't need to handle its own scrolling. Its location is already handled. We've handled the IGUI, so we can actually close out of button. The next thing I want to do is let's get level taken care of real quick because it's also a one-line thing. I want to give the levels a name, so I'm just going to do a public string level name equals, I'm just going to call it default name. And that's since we're making a modification to the structure of how our level gets saved, that means we're going to have to get rid of level. So do app data. And I already deleted mine, but you're going to have to delete them, otherwise it's not going to load them, because when we create new ones and they have this, or we try and load into this object, I'm not sure what'll happen, if it'll just take default name or something, but it's best to just delete them so we don't have issues with it. So next thing I want to do is level is done. Actually, we need to do one more thing with button. So I made a couple of these things public. My rect probably doesn't need to be public, but position and scale definitely do. So go ahead and make position and scale public because we're going to need to access those elsewhere. The way we reference them, we don't use the interface. Instead, we use references to the button. So we're just going to make those public and deal with it. So going into the menu. So menu and game window go hand in hand. We're going to add another event handler. So we have all of these. We're going to do a window.mouse. Let's see here. So it is a mouse event. We want mouse wheel plus equals window mouse wheel. And there we go. Just wanted to pre-populate with that for me. So if our mouse wheel, if our mouse is in the window, our window is active, and we scroll, we were going to do a mouse wheel event. So let's complete this method first. Actually, I don't think we can yet. So it's the same thing we want to do with other stuff. So since it's going to be relevant to a GUI, we're not going to be passing this in as like input. We're going to say for each menu, menu, and active menus. Now the way we handle let's say scrolling is because if we do like if and we have a mouse event arcs, we do an e dot what, so we got equals delta x button clicks button, which is the same thing, delta. So we don't have a lot of different things. X and Y are related to the location. Equals is just an object equals. Delta is what we're looking for. So it gets a signed count of the number of detents the mouse wheel is rotated, multiplied by the wheel delta constant. A detent is one notch of the mouse wheel. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now, if it's greater than 0, so if it's positive, we're going to scroll up, else scroll down. So we'll pass in a true or false. So if we go back to menu, and we just want to do a similar thing to handle click, I'm gonna make it virtual. Not that I think we need to do anything else with it, but for now, I've already made the mistake of not making something virtual, so the past. So we'll just go ahead and override that. So, or not override it, but change that behavior. So public virtual void handle scroll, and we'll just pass in a bool scrolled up. And we're just going to say for each IGUI element and elements, if is mouse over elem, and it's an element. We don't need to cast to an IGUI. You can say element.onScroll, scrolled up. So this will pass that directly through to the element. Any element like the border or the button that don't have it implemented, it won't do anything. When we go to make our scroll box, we will implement scrolling. So that's really it for that. We just go back to game window and we say menu.handle scroll. And we would pass in, so for this one, we want to say true. And we just copy this and say false. Okay. So this will tell it whether to scroll up or down based on what the delta is. And I think that's it for game window. For now, we might make some like slight adjustments to test loading in a scroll box. The last thing we want to do is actually make our scroll box and then create a menu that holds a scroll box for it. So let's go ahead and start the scroll box. This is where the fun begins. We'll do a new item, scroll box. Let me get my scroll box reference up so I can have some stuff. So I started with a copy and paste from, I think, border, if I'm not mistaken. I copied and pasted border. So let's go ahead and grab everything from border here, because it's going to have all of the behaviors of border. We ignore on click, we ignore on enter, we ignore on leave. We're going to do something with on scroll, but otherwise it's the same. We're going to go back to scroll box, paste everything in, and just kind of change a couple things. Firstly, it's going to take from IGUI. If it doesn't automatically add it, make sure you add it. And then change the border from the constructor to scroll box. And okay. So one thing I want to do is change the default color, because our default color for buttons is blue. So if you like scroll it, it kind of looks like the buttons are buggy. So we're going to say color dot, you can change it to whatever. You can leave it blue if you want to. We'll do Azure. I think that's a light blue. I was playing Tarkov Arena and it seemed to be a light blue there. So, okay. So the next thing I want to do is we have, based on how we handle things, we want to have a couple lists. So the first list is going to be the list of things that get pulled in. So a list of, I'm going to do level because this, I know it's not like generic, like, oh, we could use the scroll box for anything. It's a scroll box of levels. So a list of level, and we'll just call it items. That's fine. Let's reference level. Looks like using levels. Oh, I'm outside of I'm in the constructor. I'm like, why is it being all weird? We got to put this up here. Excuse me. And then the other thing we want to do is a list of button. And let's call it buttons is fine. So we're doing something a little weird because this is a GUI element that creates other GUI elements. Normally we pass through GUI elements directly to a canvas. So we have to keep note of that and do additional things, such as if we were to destroy this particular scroll box, we need to also destroy buttons. So we need to create some custom functionality for that as well. So we'll have to keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and add in our list as a parameter. So we don't pass in buttons, instead we just pass in a list of level objects. I'll say just items is fine. And we say this dot items equals items. And the next thing I want to do, so we do register this, and we want to make sure, since this is being registered, we want to put it at the beginning, since it's going to be sort of a background of the buttons. So this will put it at the bottom. And that is the cool thing. When we create these buttons, they will automatically be placed on top of this. So we don't have to worry about that. Even though they're like connected, they're also still separate entities that have no real correlation otherwise, other than the fact that this one messes with those particular buttons. So we want to say down here, and we can actually move this dot items equals items down here. And I want to do scroll buttons. Did I call it scroll button? Oh, buttons, not scroll buttons. Buttons equals new list of button. Just want to initialize that list. And then we want to populate the scroll box. That's the first thing we want to do before we do anything else. So to populate it, we'll do a new method because we have to do like a for each or a for loop. So let's come down here. We'll move all this extra stuff below, and we'll say, is these really? All right, hold on. This is bugging me. There, put this here. It's up at the top. There we go. I apologize. Being below the constructor is just like bugging me. Okay, here we go. So we'll say public void populate scroll box. It it doesn't really need to be fancy. It's nothing crazy. So for int I equals 0, so I is less than items.count, I plus plus pre-fills it for us. We're gonna say scroll buttons. Excuse me, I've done it again. Buttons dot add, and we want to pass in a new button. And this is where things get a little interesting. So there's a couple things. Firstly, we add this dot canvas because we're passing that through. We need to say we're going to do new vector 2 and new vector 2 for the width and height. And then we want to pass through, let's see, what else do we need to pass through? Yes, text. So the text we want to pass through, get out of here. So string text equals button. We want to say the text is equal to items I, so the ith element of that, dot level name, which is why we did that earlier. And then we want to give it a clicked event, an action, and an action value. We'll do that in a little bit. So let's set up the x and y. So what do we want the x to be? So the left and right. We want the x to equal this dot position dot x. This dot position dot x. What do we want the y to be? Well, since I'm doing a vertical scroll box, they're going to be like here, then here, then here, then here. So we could say this dot position dot y plus, and we'll say it needs to be this. I'm going to do the same as the as how the height's going to be calculated. So the height's going to be 100 regardless. I'm just going to do a static height for now. So plus I times 100. So if it's the 0 element, it's going to be at position.y because I times 100 is 0 times 100 is 0. Then at position 1, it'll be 1 times 100. So it'll be at plus 100. So it'll be 100 down, and so on and so on. And I realized that I put this in the scale instead of the location. So we're going to move this over by cut and paste. There we go. And then for the width and height, this is actually fairly simple. So I want the width to be this dot scale dot 100 or dot scale dot x. So it is the exact width. And then I'm just going to say 100 for the height. So this will make a, if we do paint, we have a scroll box that looks like this. It'll create a button here that goes exactly like this. And then the second button will go like this, and then like this, and so on and so on. So that is that. Let's go ahead and set up I would just call it a button clicked because it's kind of generic. So button clicked, and we'll pass in, oops, private void, excuse me. Clicked into, I'll just call it obj because that's what it likes. And I'm just gonna say for now, console.writeLine obj, so we can see that it's working. And then what we want to do is come up to the button event. Let's enter out this. So it goes to the next line. Then we'll say clicked is equal to button clicked. And then clicked value is equal to I. So we'll have a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however long items that count is. Alrighty. So the next thing we want to do is actually handle scrolling. So right now it'll create the buttons and they will appear on the screen starting at Y, or starting at the X and Y of this object. But if the buttons will function. The only thing is they will not scroll and they will be leaking out of the menu because we haven't set how the isVisible is calculated. So let's go to the scroll. So on scroll, we're already doing the check in menu to say, hey, are we over this? So are we hovering over the scroll box? So we don't need to do anything beyond that. But what we do need to do is say, so for each button in buttons, no, it's kind of ridiculous. So if we are going up, we need to say that the button dot position dot y. Now, if we're going up, we need to think in reverse to how we have been thinking. We've done a lot of training in our minds at this point with all the coding to think that minus is up and plus is down. However, since we're scrolling, we want to change the object to go up. So we want the so if we scroll up, we want the object to go up. Well, okay, this is gonna sound ridiculous because I think we're thinking of it's hard to present how we're thinking of it backwards because we are. We want the object to go up. You know what? Screw it. Just gonna button dot position plus equals 100. Yep, that's it. We're just gonna leave it at that. It's hard to explain because we do. It's like in reverse compared to what we normally do. Because like we're saying the object is going up, which it is. However, we've got it like the way it detects scroll is kind of backwards. I don't know. I figured it out by testing. It's like, all right, this, when we say up, we go plus. We say down, we say minus. In this particular case, don't let that distract you from previously. The next thing we want to do is determine whether to hide buttons. So so we just want to check. By way of doing it was, I'll bring up Paint again. This one will make it a little bit more sense. We have this. So if the button's here, it's visible. If the button, since the button starts at the Y of the menu, this will be visible. However, it's going to move when we scroll by 1, since we did by 100. This will not be visible. Down here, same thing for here. It's going to hit the bottom. It's going to be like, all right, I'm visible. That's going to go down 1 and be here or whatever. It's going to be not visible. So that's how I'm doing it. That's all. So if button dot position dot y is less than this dot position dot y, or button dot position dot y plus, because we want to check the bottom of the button dot scale dot y is greater than this dot position dot y plus this dot scale dot y. So essentially, if it is outside the bounds of our scroll box, we say this, or button that is visible equals false. and then else. So if it is within, you just want to double check and reset it to true, because if it sets it to false and then it doesn't check to see if it should be true, and then it gets back invisible, then or it comes back into range, then it's going to still be invisible. The other thing I want to do is, normally if we were going to do this like this, I'd probably toss in a method, sort of like how we did with the populate scroll box. But the other thing I want to do is make this happen on start. So let's go ahead and populate scroll box and then do this. Oops, I need to copy the entire for each loop and then just get rid of all that stuff. Copy the for each loop, put it at the bottom of the constructor, get rid of everything except for the visibility check. Otherwise, when we spawn the object, it'll spawn them outside of it, and we need to spawn that outside of it and then immediately hide them. So that is pretty much it for the scroll box. I don't think we've missed anything. It's not super complicated once you break it down. You know, what's really complicated is just figuring out, all right, what do I need to do to start this? So if you break the problem down, you know, it's responding in a bunch of buttons, or detecting when a scroll wheel happens if we're hovering over this object. If the scroll wheel happens, we move the buttons up or down, and we determine whether or not they should be visible based on whether they're in the bounds of the parent object, quote unquote. So fairly simple. Oh, there is one more piece of functionality I want to add. I don't think I use it today. I didn't really do too much with it, but we need to tell it to destroy all these particular buttons. Let's say public void destroy. So I would use this. This is the one case where destroy makes sense, because technically we could go in and like add this functionality like destroy to other things, but it's not really necessary because we just clear out the list. So when we destroy this object, or it's different because we also need to destroy other GUI elements, and the only thing that holds a reference that says these two things are related is this particular scroll box. So we need the scroll box to handle the deletion of those particular buttons. So just say button and buttons, and we just say this dot canvas dot deregister element button. That way the buttons also get destroyed. And I would just say, I would also probably add, so if we just call destroy on this, I would say, I wish you could do like an on deregister. I'm not creating an event handler. This. So just register the buttons and then deregister this. We probably deregister them here or first. It doesn't matter. This is fine. So just call destroy on this as opposed to something else. So let me add a summary here. Use destroy instead of normally deregistering because this object needs to handle the destruction or the deregistering of other related elements. No other object will know whether this is related to those other elements. Okay, so we have a particular thing that uses destroy. So that's scroll box. Let's go ahead and create a game menu for it. It's, this is mostly for testing. It's not like something where it's like, all right, we're going to start using this. It's really just kind of like a, we're going to test it out, see if everything's working, see if I missed anything. So I'll make an internal class. I'll just call it level selector menu for now, because I mean that's really all this is going to be used for. I really hope I don't have to transition this over to like a more generic thing so it can be used elsewhere. Because then it'd have to do like an inheritable scroll box with an overwritable on click event, which would be just absolutely barnacles. Okay, so we're gonna copy in our normal stuff that we use. So game window game, this dot game equals game, and then we're just gonna do real quick. So list of level, test level list equals new list of level. So we're just gonna create just a list right here. We're not gonna like store it or anything for future use because I don't think we're gonna be keeping this class. Now we're gonna do a for loop. So for int I equals 0. We'll do 10. That gives us a good idea. So we'll do var a equals new level. So we'll create a level, and because I want to set these, so I normally just say test level list dot add a or a new level, but I want to set some variables. So a dot level name equals, and we'll say level name plus I.toString, then test level list add a, and then once that's all done, we'll just say new scroll box. Oops. And we need to pass in, excuse me, we need to pass in a few things. Again, since we're just testing, we don't have to be like super crazy about this. So pass in this because this is a menu. I'm gonna do a new vector2. We'll just kind of close it off. New vector2, close it off. And then we're gonna pass in test level list. And then the default color is fine since we changed it. I'm just gonna do this at 0x and y100, so it's a little off from the top. And then we'll do like 200 wide and then 500 tall. So it takes a majority of the left, or like vertically, but not all of it. And then level selector menu. A good place to do this right now is start level. It's like, all right, which level do you want to start? So we'll just say new level selector menu game up in start level from our play menu. So it'll deregister that menu and then it'll create our level selector. So let's see if we missed anything. Keep in mind, we're not pulling anything from like a file yet. That wouldn't be associated with the creation of the menu itself. That would be handled prior. So that won't be in this video. So let's hit start a new level. And okay, so it looks like we got our list. Let's see if what happens if we scroll. Looks like we can go down. One thing to note, and this is something I did notice, I'm not too worried about it. I'm not gonna bother with it right now, is our scrolling is infinite. Like it doesn't say like, hey, no. So what we could probably do is actually, let's try and fix it here. So let's say, so how do we do this? So, oops, didn't mean to do that. So I'm just thinking, so if we go back to our scroll box, because I know this video is already longer than I'd like it to be. So on scroll, so we need to determine if we need to scroll at all. So it would be within this for each loop, but we'd want to do a for each prior to determine if we need to scroll. So we're gonna have to do 2 for each loops. We could pass this into its own function, but it's a lot of work. So what the heck? That's because I did that goofily. Okay, there we go. So if, okay, so we need to say if we're trying to scroll up, if we're trying to scroll up for each button, if we're trying to scroll up, if button dot location or position dot y is, let's see here. So because we need to do some math to figure out when to stop scrolling essentially. Because we don't want to just like stop scrolling because our list is so far beyond or so far. Let's see. So, and we only need one button to be out of these bounds. So if we're scrolling up, if it's less than this dot position dot y times buttons, so minus buttons dot length or count times 100. So we may still end up like an empty list, but you shouldn't be able to scroll past that. So return. So we want to return. So we don't want to allow it to do anything. It's like, hey, don't scroll again. You've already scrolled enough. Else. So if we're scrolling down, if button.position.y is greater than, and we want to do button.position.y plus button.scale.y is greater than this.position.y plus plus button.count. But we also want to add this .scale.y to it. So that should do it. So we return instead of scrolling. So it should prevent infinite scroll, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. So I'm continuing to scroll repeatedly. I'm just up, 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 up. Okay, it looks like it didn't work. I think a good way to test this would probably be add a console log. So let's go ahead and close this out and say console, oops, dot right line, able to scroll. Scrolling. Okay, let's check again. Play. Okay, so it is infinitely scrolling. So what is wrong here? If button.position.y is less than position.y, here let's do these in parentheses. I don't think we need to, but who knows? No, I'm scrolling up. Or I mean, I'm scrolling down. That's right. Okay. So we want to actually cut this out, put it here, and put this one here. That is my bad. Okay. That's because the reverse. We normally think of it the other way. And it stopped. And it stopped. So we could do like button stat count. So we don't need to add these extra parentheses. Say minus maybe 2. Well, okay. We could subtract the amount to determine how much subtract this not a specific amount, but a variable amount based on the height of the scroll box to determine a more exact count. But we're just gonna do -2 for now. So we'll still have like a plus buttons count -2. Should be the same for those. So now if we do the scroll, it's not gonna go all the way. We always have something on screen. And we could like see the problem is it's well -2 because it's gonna be variable. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we do like 5 -5 just for now. If we ever need to change it, we can. But it'd be nice to always have something on screen. Dang, I need to subtract one more, -6. I just want to get this like perfect for now until we move on to something else. So I don't have to come back and like, oh, let's go do this real quick because it's bugging me. I haven't done that plenty. All right. So here we go. We got every single one from 0 to 9 up here. And if we were to change this and say, go to the game window where our game menus or this is created and did like, let's say 20 instead of just 10. Play, start new level. So we start at 0, we can't scroll up. We scroll all the way down to 19 because that's 0 through 19 is 20. We still can't scroll. So regardless of how many we add, if we use this exact height, this will always work for us and we will always have something to click. And if we click on these, boop, 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 boop. So we can identify different buttons that way as well. So that is everything for this video. I apologize that it took so long, but this took a lot of work to address and do based on what we'd already done. In the next video, we're going to actually generate these buttons based on save files. So we're going to have to create some save files, and then we're going to load the selected level when we select this button. So yeah, fun stuff. In the meantime, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.